President Gaby, if
Go
I
ahead.
might add too, I would like to remind all of us and all of our staff and anyone who's listening, schools are not wealthier or richer. Schools are not wealthier or richer.
You knew there was going to be a but. I do have a couple of thoughts that I'd like your board to consider as you consider this. The middle school boundary adjustments, they remain mildly distressing to me, primarily from a socioeconomic perspective. And this really all boils down to Ridgeview and a couple of the other middle schools where there is a very substantial socioeconomic difference between those particular middle schools. For example, with Ridgeview being at about 47%, Divisadero and Valley Oak being all the way up to 65%. Those are substantial differences, and that's a concern. The elementary school boundary shifts would actually exacerbate that difference and create about 43% for Ridgeview. So the lower down, kind of the richer the school is, right? So in other words, what and may end up resulting is this: the rich school is getting a little bit richer. The more stark difference occurs at the high school level. And this is a tougher one. Only 36% of the students at Redwood are living in disadvantaged situation, whereas opposed to Mount Whitney, it's 62%. That is a very stark difference, of course. The proposed boundary shifts, they wouldn't exacerbate that. So good, but they're not going to make it any better. And I think that this is a golden opportunity for your board and for this school district to really make some fundamental change by addressing what's at the crux of the issue, which is the feeder school situation and the boundaries of where the feeder schools go. And I'm really hoping that if it doesn't occur tonight, I do understand that there's a long-term plan, and perhaps that is something that your board would seriously consider as addressing. I understand it created crazy consternation the last time that this was brought up, 12 years ago or whatever the number is. The last item for you to consider is Redwood itself. Redwood is by far and away the most overcrowded high school, right? And there's some discussion about really checking the address status of the incoming ninth graders, but not necessarily really anything else other than this hope to reduce transfers in by 150 students. My suggestion is really to just make it far more clear. Prohibit transfers in, period, except in crazy situations that would be subject to the superintendent's review and approval. And really rethink whether or not the academies at Redwood should be moved to a different campus to help alleviate that overcrowding. Thank you very much, board.
Thank you. Joel Moore?
I promise we didn't share notes at all. I expressed that my name is Joel Moore, and I had the same concerns. I'm very excited about the process. I attended all the meetings, did all the questionnaires. I probably did more. I spent 3 hours answering to different people's questions until I realized what I was doing. But I just looked at those inner cities, and it's weird to say Visalia is an inner city school, but I just look at the older schools, Conyer, GLC, Houston, these schools that are being fed with these students, and I drive through those neighborhoods. I see the disparity between Mooney on the east side and the west side, or Riggin on the north side and the south side, and it strikes me as so scary for these students to be stuck in a school where they look at the other school and say, well, why do the wealthier kids get to go to that school when I get to go to this school? My kids are going to be going to Divisadero in Mount Whitney, which I'm excited for. I'm a Mount Whitney alum, so I'm very excited about that. But I don't want Mount Whitney to be forgotten. And looking at the numbers, it looks like Mount Whitney's been forgotten because many students aren't transferring into Mount Whitney. They're going to Redwood, which was the arch enemy, if you will. And so I just hope that you guys look at that process as you guys go through this process. I know it's been 15 years since we've updated these boundaries. And so I'm excited that you're willing to look at them instead of moving these elementary in Redwood. I thought that was a crazy idea to guys do, what your vision is for giving these kids a better future, for exciting them about education, and giving them a vision of something better than their neighborhood or their friends and what they're doing in their own neighborhood. And
all right, any board member comments?
Yeah. Mr. or Randy, I'm just going to call you Randy, Dr. Villegas. Dr. Villegas brought this up actually at the last board meeting about the socioeconomic disparity that we are seeing. I appreciate the comment about that.
Thank you. Ditto. Thank you to everybody's comments. Something I highlighted at our last meeting and at the board workshop session. I think it is very important for our schools to be reflective of our community. According to our dashboard, about 67.6% of our student population is considered low or socioeconomically disadvantaged. And our schools should be reflective of that to the best of our ability to make sure that students are able to foster friendships across socioeconomic status, to build collaboration, to be exposed to different ideas, and to really be reflective of our community as a whole. And so I hope that is something we can deeply take into consideration as a board. I think the way I put it in one of our board workshop sessions was like, I don't want a board 10 years from now thinking, darn, like, how are we dealing with these boundaries? Like, we could have, the board from 2024 could have, made bigger adjustments and those tougher decisions. And I'm hoping that we can deeply pay attention to that moving forward. With that being said, one request that I would ask of staff moving forward as we go to long-term planning is, though we got the socioeconomic data of our middle schools and our high schools, the socioeconomic data of our elementary schools was not present in the presentation. And so I would like to see the socioeconomic diversity of our schools at the elementary level, though I understand that the intention is to have the sort of neighborhood school model. I think it's important for those elementaries to also be reflective of our community. And perhaps that also helps shape the way we think about feeder patterns as we think about long-term planning, and to make sure our schools are equitable and that all of our students have the opportunity to see the amazing things at all of these schools. So thank you all for this discussion. I hope we can continue to think about this as we do long-term planning.
President Gaby, if I might add too, I would like to remind all of us and all of our staff and anyone who's listening, schools are not wealthier or richer. Schools are not wealthier or richer. We work very, very hard, diligently, to make sure that our schools are equal. And we use that word equitable and we throw it around quite a bit. And in order to bring up some of the shortcomings because of neighborhoods, we would probably have to enter into the 70s or the 60s where I grew up. And that experiment failed miserably, busing people across town just to make it richer or poorer. And so I want to remind everyone, we've endeavored to make every school excellent. And no school should ever be labeled as richer or poorer or wealthier than another school, because they aren't. Yes, homes cost more in certain areas, and some people have more bank accounts that are larger in some areas, but it's a perception, it's a perspective of whether or not we are rich or poor in our hearts and minds and our futures. We live in America where it's boundless what your future can be. And that's what we need to be teaching, and that's what we need to be emphasizing as Visalia Unified School District. Every student, every day, will have the opportunity to learn at their maximum for a maximum future.